Welcome everyone to another episode of the Terrain Studio. I'm your host, Sean Morris. Today on the Terrain Studio, we're going to continue our work on the Kashyyk tree here. You'll notice that I have advanced it a little bit from our previous video. I added basically the top portion of the S-curve, as well as I've added a few, these are just set in place, I've added a few of the sort of platform-like elements. So we are getting pretty tall in terms of the studio setup. So here it is, I built a bigger studio for more filming, and yet I'm still finding that I'm outgrowing the space in terms of vertical dimensions anyway. So we'll do our best to fit everything on camera and kind of show you guys what's going on. The upper camera is obviously going to kind of capture the transformation of the top portion, which is really, truthfully, all that we really need for this build. At least this build video. The side camera here is just going to kind of capture the height and sort of show you a side profile of what's going on. So let me just rotate this around a little bit to kind of show you what I've done here. So here, kind of capturing the S-curve. I'm not sure how much of the camera is picking up on the entirety of this, but let me just lift that up a little bit. So you can see here that I've sort of just arced it out and then sort of arced it back. Have this nice big overhang, and now we're bringing it here. I did need to create a platform piece here, and the reason being is I want to create a space where my tree branches can kind of start arcing off. I have yet to determine whether I'm going to do 3 or 4. I think I'm going to do 4 total. With one being more of an artificial limb, and I'll kind of explain what I think about that here in a minute. So just rotating this around, the whole build has lots of potential for platforms in the future, and that's why I'm using this stepwise fashion, just to kind of create some ability to have attachment points later on. I'll probably dry fit in a little bit of that before I start carving too much. Because I want to get a sense of where I can leave some flat portions for later attachment and where I can kind of have more rounded elements for just basically tree trunk type spaces. So this is even a little bit difficult for me to kind of see and work on because it is so tall. But what we're going to do is we're going to use these 4-inch pieces here, and these are going to kind of create our tree-like elements, or tree branch-like elements. So what I was thinking last night is this one, again, is just set in place. That's the one that we drew on there. This has potential to sort of create a platform sort of circling around here. And so what I was thinking about doing was adding in a tree branch here that would extend just up here, and then it would allow me to later attach a piece going out and around that. So again, if you envision this on the board sort of like this, that tree piece that sort of juts out here, it'd be nice to have a further overhang right over that. Then I can actually do some supports and struts coming off this to sort of support that platform. So I do like that piece there. So let's just envision for a second how that might look. I'm just going to dry fit these. Perhaps it goes out just a little bit and then starts getting a little bit straighter as we would sort of carve that piece down. Again, thinning out the top portion here would be definitely the plan, the route we're going to go, because we want to make sure that we have something that narrows into a canopy-like structure. So if we do that, we're using 6 there. So if we take a quick count of what we have, that would make another branch, that would make another branch in theory, that would make another branch, and then we'd have a few left. Now this one here I envision being slightly shorter. So if I go ahead and calculate the rest out, I have approximately 8 inches for each of the tree branches. So let's just envision for a second, we're going to leave that one there. I'm just going to pull that off. Now we have a couple other sections that we can work from. Obviously we have this nice flat portion here at the very top. We have this other platform piece that's out here. And how I envision this working is if the platform comes, I'm not sure what exactly you're able to see here, if the platform comes out and around here, it'd be nice if it can kind of go up and join over here. So that leaves this one here, this platform, that perhaps we can just start adding in, another branch. Maybe this one has the ability to kind of sweep out to the edge here. Let me just rotate this. So maybe this one shoots out this way quite some distance, giving us a little bit of room here. Perhaps maybe there's a couple guard towers or a couple small platforms just out and able to kind of extend out far from the tree and see everything that's below. So if we set that aside and kind of use that as option 2 for a tree branch. Then we're going to rotate around. We have a little bit on the back side as well as the top. Now, we probably don't want to leave the center of the tree completely open. We'll probably want to have some ability to fill that center space, although we could leave it for a nice platform. We have a platform running here, one running here, so my thought is that the middle doesn't need to be as open. If we're going to go with the piece here, we already have 1 inch, so that would allow us to kind of come down to 7 inches, maybe something a little bit more central, and we can kind of play with how we angle those pieces. Unlike the tree, we can actually sort of skew these on slightly different angles, and that will allow us to be really, really organic with the shape and really let us narrow some sections. So if we go 7 inches there, we now have the ability to have these two level. And then when we're adding our canopy piece, we know that those two will match up. The other piece was only 6 inches. However, it was down, it'll be down 1 inch from here, actually 2 inches from the middle, 1 inch from here. So in theory, what we could do is we could add to the previous one, or we can just leave it the same and have those two and have a little bit of an offset. Now we're still left with some branches, and what to do with those is the question. Let's rotate this around here. We have nothing coming off this, and this one, if we add one here, would be nice and close, and I really like the prospect of that. So what I want to do here is I think I'm going to just come off the end, and if you can see here, let me just move this one out of the way, we have kind of a tight space here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to carve this so it's going to snug fit in there, almost like a key fit, and it's going to go in a little bit. So it'll be more like that to start. Just gives us a bit more attachment points. And then what I'm going to do is run this not too far out, but definitely up as high as the central piece. So one more there. Perfect. And then I will add one more to the first one that we did over here to bring that up to 7 inches. So we're basically going to have one, you guys can't even see that. Let me bring it back to center here. We're going to have one here, one here, one here. So we'll have this one run off in this direction. This one will be more central. This one, I think what we'll do is we'll curve it a little bit this way. And then this one here, obviously running up here. So the canopy will fill very much this space here, smaller canopy here. We'll have some ability to kind of see in from various angles, but we'll have a really nice profile. So it's going to be a bit difficult to see me creating all those, but I will do one on camera just for the purposes of the build, and then you guys will be able to come back later on and see. So it's exactly the same process as yesterday, so I don't need to go into super detail about that, but I wanted to kind of give you guys a sense of how big this tree actually is. So we have here, this will be an 8-inch section. This will be a 7-inch section, I believe. That one will be 8 inches as well. This one is the shorter of the two. All right, so there we go. I guess they'll all end up at approximately 8 inches. So that'll give us the ability to add, subtract as we will. Obviously, we can shave that down and trim some pieces. So with that being said, we're going to be at 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 25, with a 6-inch section added here. So roughly about 31 inches or so, 32 inches on some of the outside pieces. So it's pretty big. It's at that 3-foot mark almost. Obviously, by the time we add the canopy, we're probably creeping over that 36, 38-inch mark. We'll almost be at camera height when we start this. So that'll be super impressive. Another nice thing about this, and some people had asked me about what would be the playability of this. Let's just clear some things up in terms of skirmish, speaking specifically about Legion. One, this is not a terrain feature for the purposes of something like key positions. This will be the board. So this tree piece will just simply be a non-tree feature. I envision kind of using platforms as the equivalent of buildings. So those would be sort of things that you could touch or sort of add objectives to. And one of the reasons that I wanted to have it such a vaulted height was you would be able to reach in and play on each of these structures without having to sort of move or dismantle a lot of it. So you can keep the canopy on. It's not great for filming, we'll obviously remove that, but you can keep the canopy on and actually play in and amongst the tree without having to dismantle it. In addition, you and your opponent can reach around a lot of the tree to play on it, as well as being able, with the S-curve, it allows you to reach your arms around to get to the various platforms. Changing the orientation, much like anything, actually does change the look of the board considerably. So that's another reason that I wanted to have a very dynamic tree-like structure. All right, so let's just go ahead and add in one of these features. Perhaps what we'll do is we'll start with the one kind of coming off here on the edge. So we're going to grab our weld bond here real quick, just like yesterday. Again, not going to waylay the process too much, but let me just slide a few things aside. There we go. So when setting up yesterday, I was doing kind of one at a time, and that obviously is great for the initial run through, but I did want to show you guys that you can expedite processes of this pretty quick, and we'll do that. We'll kind of do it real time here. Just saves you having to, especially when your jug's starting to get to the bottom, having to sit there and pour out the glue. So anytime here we go. Great. Run that over here, there, and there. Super. Okay. Clean that up. Perfect. So we just basically have poured our glue out. We can ration that out as we see fit. Again, same thing as yesterday. Just moving that glue around. Got a lot of any excess glue. Just put it actually back in your container. You don't need to go crazy on the glue here. You guys can see this tree is sticking together perfectly fine. I already tell there's, and again, it's really quick and easy. You can dump out what you need and you can ration it back in. There's no contamination or anything occurring by touching on the foam. Obviously that doesn't work for everything. You can't pour it out on every surface and do that, but this is certainly one of those things that you can do. So again, you can see I'm just keeping the glue rather thin. Having these set up. And with terrain making, there is a lot of redundancies. So being a comprehensive build and kind of showing you guys what I'm doing, you will see that. But I like to kind of keep it within the reality of the amount of work you actually have to do. Things do happen off camera. That's usually just for ease of showing you guys stuff. But just be prepared when you embark on any terrain process. But you will have to put in some work. This stuff doesn't just happen. It's not maybe as satisfying as painting figures, or I'm not saying painting figures happens instantaneously either. But certainly the canvas that you're working on for a miniature versus starting from nothing takes a considerable amount of work. We're going to hopefully in the end, when we get this project all done, buttoned up, people will not look at that and think anything back to where we started. I don't want people to look at that and be like, oh, that looks like a giant carved piece of foam, or that guy just glued some foam together. I want it to look nothing like foam. I don't even want that to be a consideration in the end result. So this initial work, perhaps boring, I will give you that, but definitely a necessary step, and I think you guys will appreciate the end product a lot more if you're able to kind of see the steps along the way. And I certainly enjoy all the steps. That's really why I do this stuff. But I think you guys, especially if you're just new to terrain making, even if you're not building a Kashyyk tree, you guys will get a sense. Like, I mean, you could use this to build a castle or ruins or, buildings or mountains. Like this process, the process that we're showing here, are truthfully redundant things that are applicable across lots of biomes, lots of projects. So hopefully you guys are, if you're not inspired by this build, maybe you're inspired by the steps to at least tackle something of your own. Okay, so let's try to fit this into place. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna have to decide whether we wanna go all the way back, and I think I do. I think I wanna go right back into here. And the reason being is I wanna give myself an attachment point along the way there. So these are gonna be a little trickier to carve because obviously when we're carving out, we're gonna wanna keep the platform as intact as possible. So we will we'll recreate a flat surface. So this foam is mostly attachment. It's not. I'm not looking to like preserve this as my platform. But just keeping in mind when we're carving down, we're going to have to be careful when we get to the bottom here. All right. So I'm start creating an overhang here. And again, we're going to shoot this out. I'm going to kind of shoot this out. And we're going to give this one a twist now. So you're going to see how we're going to start creating some organic shapes, even amongst the geometric shapes here. So I'm going to kind of twist this guy, going out over. I'm going to twist this guy back here. Right out over the current existing overhang. So there we go. That's all there is really to it. Some glue on the side, and I'm not going to worry about that. So now we have a piece kind of extending out over the existing jutty. So they're almost lined up, which is kind of cool. And then, as I said, when we come back and we start getting into the platforms, this platform is going to go out, probably not going to go out extend past that, but kind of keep tight in there. And then again, remembering those platforms are kind of like rounded in shape and sort of conical at the bottom. I don't know if I'm going to do all the conical shapes or if I'm actually going to use kind of like supports coming out from the tree, because I like the idea of having sort of almost like a scaffolding type understructure. I think it just looks a little bit more interesting. I may use a few of the conical shapes just to kind of keep within scope, but I really like the idea of these bamboo structures kind of coming out, tree-like structures, creating some sort of braces, winding some twine around them, so they look like they're really basically made out of all organic materials. And I think that'll look kind of cool. So from the top profile, the tree's got a bit of a lean to it here, and that's just kind of how the foams naturally stack up. I'm perfectly fine with that. If the tree was, perfectly straight, it may look a little less organic. By the time we add in all the bark-like elements, all that's going to be sort of moot anyways, because you won't really be able to see any actual lines. The only reason we can see that now is because everything is very, very geometric and crude. So I'm going to go ahead. Oops, you know what? I realized I had left one off here. I'll go ahead and just add that right here. I have to be very careful. I cannot apply any weight there, so I'm just going to let the natural weight of the foam hold and solidify. So just keep in mind when you are extending out your branches, if you have to go so wide out that it's not going to sit, you may have to make that in two parts. Glue the first one, then glue the second one, and then just use some, if you guys can see any of my face anymore, just use some painter's tape. Painter's tape is great for the foam. It allows it to hold in place. I actually mock built the entire thing with painter's tape, and I built a structure very similar in size, just with tape alone. So it does work. However, you will have to, if you're extending too far, you will have to make sure that you tape it, otherwise it's just gonna topple out. I just had an idea actually as I'm sitting at this angle. One, a point, and two, an idea. When you are building things, just be very careful that you're not building from one direction. It's a good band, but it's not a good technique for the build. What you need to do is you need to be constantly rotating your piece around, changing angles, changing your own body angle, approaching it from, looking up. We'll definitely have to make that consideration as we add other elements. But make sure that you are looking at your piece from different angles Otherwise, it's going to probably have a one view construction, meaning when you look at it from other angles, you're going to either notice big gaps in terms of design, or you're going to notice things that you could have done had you been looking at it from other angles. So one of the things I just thought about here, we talked about the middle and either wanting to have it open, and I chose not to, but how can we make it interesting? And I thought that if I were to go ahead and add a more central piece coming off, remember that we're also going to add a piece coming here and here. What we could end up doing is we could do a small bridge-like structure, just extending between the branches here. So, you know, a one figure wide base, just extending there, nice sniper platform, something like that would be quite interesting to add in there. So I hadn't saw that previously as I was kind of explaining it to you, but I think that would look rather cool. Another thing too, if we wanted to, is we could actually just change the design slightly and go with two branches close here and actually have the middle open, and perhaps have two of those pieces coming off. So when I'm doing the next sort of mock build here, when I'm kind of building these out, I'm going to have to look at both of those designs. It'll be a mystery as to what I choose, but when we come back in the next video through the week, I'll definitely have that done. Just a preview for the videos coming up after we have all the build done. Obviously, we're good to go there. We won't have to add any more foam. What we will start doing though is we'll start the carving process. The tree is definitely going to be the focal point for the first few weeks here, just to get that to a place where I like it. We'll probably go ahead and add the bark-like elements and all those other things onto the tree. And then we'll set the tree aside after we get it sort of in place. We'll start working on some of the ground structures first. We won't do any of the platforms or accoutrements to the tree until we get to later stages. However, when we do add the bark, we will have to come back to the tree and just make sure that we're taking those considerations. I don't want to have to drill through the bark too much in order to add structures. I'm fine to do that, but we'll have some conversation around what that should look like, just so that we are not making everything an afterthought. And that's quite important for us to consider as well. So I do appreciate you guys checking this out. Hopefully it's starting to look like something. To me it looks like something. It looks like a giant pile of foam. But in my head it looks like something else. So you guys probably aren't quite there yet. But hopefully as we're going through, your imagination's starting to get ahead of the videos, and that's really important when you're making terrain as well. So any questions, comments, fire them below. If you guys just appreciate what's happening here, that's also nice to hear from time to time as well. So till next video, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.